differences. Thank you very much. This is part of a series of evenings we have spent looking at the differences in other religions, which are absolutely fascinating, because we might know about our own, but we don't know about others. And I really want to thank Said for organising this. And I'm actually going to pass over to her in a minute, that she will introduce our dear speakers. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to listen to the speakers, and at the very end of that, we're going to ask our questions. So if you would like to put a question on chat, Calder is going to monitor them for us, which is very nice. We've got lots of time to sort of join together at the end and talk about what we've heard, what any queries we might have, and any further learning. But it's going to be a lovely learning evening. So I'm going to pass over to Said now. And would you like to introduce the first speaker, and then the second, and then the third?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening, and welcome to the Hindu event. So I'd like to introduce our two speakers. So our first speaker, we're really lucky to have Radha Mohan Das, who joined the ISKCON Hare Krishna movement in 1993, and today is the communications officer at the Bhaktivedanta Manor near Watford. He is the co-author of a number of books about the movement and also runs a Vedic science channel on YouTube. In addition, he is a key member of the temple's community drama group, so we're really looking forward to hearing from him. Our second speaker is Serena Jones. Serena was born into a Sri Lankan and Welsh family. Serena's parents took her to the Sri Sathya Sai Centre for bhajans, which is devotional singing, and education classes since she was 4 years old. She's been through the education programme until she was 18 years old, and she now teaches young adults as part of the Lotus programme. Lotus stands for Life's Opportunity to Understand Self and Spirituality. Serena is also involved with various music groups as part of the Sri Sathya Sai International Organisation, and has participated in many live and online offerings. It's also worth mentioning that Serena is one of my childhood best friends, so it's pretty cool to have her here alongside me as well. And then the last speaker is me. I've been involved with the Sri Rajeswary Amman temple in Epsom. My granddad is one of the founding trustees there, so I've pretty much been going there since birth. My role there now is as the youth and education coordinator, where I deliver educational workshops to school children and any external visitors. As well as that, I also run a youth group where we do some voluntary services, and we help out in the local community. So yeah, that's our speakers. So yeah, back to you, Margaret.
So, Radha, may I call you that?
You can call me Radha Mohan, because Radha on its own is a girl's name.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. So Radha hyphen Mohan. It doesn't matter. I don't mind, but it's Radha hyphen Mohan. Radha Mohan.
Well, thank you very much, Radha Mohan. And we're really looking forward to hearing from you and your enthusiasm for what you are, where you celebrate, and to ingest it into us as well.
Well, it's an honour to be invited. I'm both honoured and humbled to meet all of you. But I think I better get on, because I understand we're running slightly late. Okay, can I share my screen with everybody? I'm going to do it now. I'm just going to make sure that it works, because you know how these things can be sometimes. Here we go. Let's have a look. Okay, good. Can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just going to put a slideshow on for everybody's entertainment. Isn't that wonderful? All right. Okay. Everyone can say that. I'll just speak for the slides, and after that, you'll see more of me. But I wanted to include this to begin with. So a lot of the things that's misunderstood about Hinduism is not a single religion per se, not in the same way that some of the other world religions are understood, like the Catholic Church, or it's a bit different. Generally, Hinduism refers to the vast array of traditions, cultures, and religious beliefs originating from South Asia, and especially, of course, India. Now, the tradition I'm speaking of, which of course is most well known as the Hare Krishna movement, or more formally the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, is from a branch that was begun by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he's the one near the center of this beautiful picture, this painting, in the yellow dhoti, you know, the bottom half there, called a dhoti or trouser section there. He is believed to be a divine divinity, if you like, our Messiah figure, for want of a better word, who popularized the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra all around India, and he was actually from Bengal. Thus, our tradition is a Bengali form of Hinduism, loosely speaking. I'll carry on a bit. Important people in our line, our tradition: Bhaktivinoda Thakur on the left there, and on the right is Bhaktivedanta Saraswati, who revived in India about 1.5 centuries ago this tradition of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I mean, actually, it was a far longer tradition of Hinduism, but this is this particular branch, so to speak. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, a disciple. This is, of course, when he was older. He actually took this tradition outside of India. Before that, there was about 81 temples opened by Bhaktisiddhanta from the previous slide, but only in India. But his ambition was to have centers all around the world. So it wasn't until the person you see in front of you there, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who went on this mission to preach around the world. He actually had humble beginnings on the back streets and the Bowery slums in New York, where he was practically penniless, just arrived on a cargo ship, having 2 heart attacks at the age of 70. And in the beginning of his missionary work, he was practically alone. And as this picture tends to kind of carry that atmosphere. But before long, he began the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra and teaching and preaching to young people, not just in New York, but also across the United States, like this particular picture was in San Francisco. And the aforementioned mantra, the Hare Krishna mantra, goes like this: Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This is an ancient mantra, but obviously popularized actually around the world actually by this movement. Krishna means the all-attractive Supreme Lord. Hare means the energy of Krishna, and Rama means the Supreme Enjoyer. So it's a prayer which means, "Oh dear Lord, please engage me in your loving devotion." That's how it would translate roughly into English. So Swami Prabhupada, this is a photo taken in the 1970s. In the 1970s, this movement grew a lot around the world, where he took over 5,000 disciples there, and started all kinds of festivals, as you can see there. A very important personality in the blue was George Harrison. He became a sympathizer in the late 60s, early 70s. And there he is with his wife, Patty Boyd, at the time, and Prabhupada and the Hare Krishna follower on the right of the screen. George Harrison donated this rather beautiful mock Tudor mansion building called Bhaktivedanta Manor. And that's where I'm based. And that's about 3 miles outside of Watford in Hertfordshire. So this is today this is the main UK headquarters of the movement. We just had a new building built with the red roof there, and the original building you can see there just towards the top of the picture. So we've been expanding a lot, and now we have 78 acres of land in this particular centre. Before I move off these slides, we have 650 centres around the world. We have 516 million books have been distributed since the outset of this movement. And we have 110 vegetarian restaurants around the world. I won't give all these figures, but just to give you an idea, more than 3 billion meals of sanctified vegetarian food has been distributed around the world since 1966. And 1.2 million meals of sanctified vegetarian food are served daily to children in India. And just one other figure here from this list. There's 65 farms and eco-villages around the world as well in this movement. And finally, this rather beautiful picture. This is our new cathedral, if you like, a new big centre in our headquarters in West Bengal, in India, of course, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was born, who I mentioned him earlier. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to come out of this particular thing and stop sharing my screen. Let's see if I can do that. Okay, bear with me a second. Okay. Oh, here we go. Okay, just bear with me a second. I'm just trying to stop sharing my screen so you can see my face. Okay, where are we? Okay, excuse me. It's okay. The slide itself is just covering the button where it says, okay, there I am. So, okay, I'll continue talking if I may. So everyone saw the pictures, I assume, yeah? Hello? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you did. Okay, sorry, I can't.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Okay, so so how did I get involved in this particular religion, you may say? Well, I was a drama student in Manchester, and I was looking for something spiritual. I was looking for answers, and I'd already read the Bhagavad Gita, which is the Hindu holy book, by that time, and I decided to get more involved in the movement there. And I was young, free, and single, so why not? So I found myself backpacking with the Hare Krishna devotees around India, and the rest is history. That was about 29 years ago. So that's how basically how. So the main form of worship, we do chanting on our beads is very important to us. We do a lot of bhajans, which means devotional music. We do deity worship, which is quite prominent in the Hindu traditions. It's where there's a shrine and so forth. I won't show images of that, but it's usually very, very beautiful. And let me quickly show you this. Inside this magic bag here, I suppose you might be familiar with things like this, as like rosary, or Buddhists also have, and in Islam also have things like this. These are my meditation beads. So we do a lot of meditation, chanting the Hare Krishna mantra on our beads there. That's very important in our tradition. Our main books, of course, there are many books within the Hindu tradition. As I mentioned earlier, it's not just one single sect or anything. It's very broad, very wide. It's more of a culture than a religion. But in our particular branch, Bhagavad Gita is very important to us, the Bhagavat Purana, and books like that. I've been asked to say a few things about Bhaktivedanta Manor itself. Bhaktivedanta Manor, we have the largest single Hindu-style festival in the world outside of India, called Janmashtami, the birth of Lord Krishna. And that's attended, before the pandemic, it was attended by about 60,000 people over a 3-day period, although this year a bit less, about 33,000, and that was with social distancing. We have entertainment, we have free food, vegetarian food, exhibitions, a bazaar, worship, and it's a whole big festival, believe you me, very difficult to organize as well. So, belief. Basically, yes, we believe in reincarnation. We believe in karma, which means you as you sow, so shall you reap. Basically, how you behave and what your mentality is will determine your next destination at the time of death. These bodies are vehicles for this particular lifetime. We are not the body; we are the soul within the body. So when people say, "Oh, I have a soul," it's a bit misleading. Actually, we are the soul and we have a body. Just like someone would be a passenger of a car, the soul is the passenger of the body until the body passes away, and the soul will go on to its next destination according to what you deserve and what you desire. But we desire not to be reincarnated again and again and again, but to be free from this cycle of reincarnation and go back home, back to be with Lord Krishna, which of course is eternal, etc. I suppose that's our heaven, if you like. There's a deeper philosophy behind that, but I imagine it might be more appropriate to receive questions about that because it's so vast, it would be difficult to know where to begin, frankly. But someone sent me something here. If I have a minute or so remaining, I hope. So someone said, can I talk about animals, caste and gender? I can talk about animals. The cow in the Hindu tradition is a sacred animal. All animals are kind of sacred. That's why we're vegetarian. We don't wish to harm anything, of course. We believe that it is a more natural diet, certainly more environmentally friendly to be vegetarian. We don't cause as least possible harm to others as possible, because animals have souls as well. Indeed, we ourselves one day we may have been an animal in a previous birth. The caste system, I'll finish a little bit on that, if I may. The caste system we would consider to be, we're anti, we're a reform movement, if you like, we're against the caste system. But the caste system itself was what we would describe as a degraded version of what existed in India thousands and thousands of years ago, but has since been misunderstood and mispracticed. So we reject what we call the caste system. However, the original intention of it was noble. It was just to do with the purpose of it was to put the Brahmanas, or the priestly caste, the holy people, on top of society. But I'm not sure how practical something like that would be in this day, in this urbanized society. So hence, this movement exists in some way. Our as before, we're in the line or the branch of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who appeared in the opening slide, and he rejected the caste system. So that's that really. I don't want to go on too long and use up anyone else's time. I'm just going to have a quick look in the chat box, because in case there's anything for me I can mention now. Oh, there isn't. Okay. Okay, can I stop there? Is that all right, anyone? Or do you want me to go on longer?
That's perfect, Radha, Mohan, but we will have questions at the end. Are you okay? Can you stay or not?
I have to make a move at about 8:40.
Okay, we will make sure, because there are, I'm sure, more than one or two that will be coming in. So we'll do the chat box at the end, because it'd be interesting to hear what each speaker has to say, and then it'll be a whole for us to actually learn from and enjoy. But thank you very, very much. And I love the new buildings you're doing, because I've seen the old one before. I used to have friends living in Radlett, so
Radlett's
I remember coming at a big festival weekend, and it wasn't easy to travel by, but never mind.
Yes, that sounds like the big festival, and I apologise for the traffic.
Yes, well, I'll go back to Said, and she can now introduce our next speaker, and we'll come back to you. And I do appreciate your speaking to us.
Margaret, can we ask Ron Batchelor to turn himself round?
Pardon?
Ron Batchelor is standing on his head. Could we turn him round? Because it's
he can turn himself round. We can't do it.
No, but he doesn't know.
He has to touch his screen.
Yeah,
he has to touch his screen.
That must be much more comfortable.
Is he doing some yoga or something?
I don't know what he was up to, but I thought it was a bit distracting for the speakers.
All he has to do is touch his screen, and he can turn himself round. So, Said, back to you now.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Margaret. Okay, so our next speaker is Serena. So the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Saida. Hi, everybody. Thank you again for having me today. I'm really excited to learn from all of you as well, and to share my presentation. So I'm going to share my screen as well, as I've got a PowerPoint. I'm going to try and do it with my notes. So let me know if you can see my notes.
Yes.
So you can't see my little secret notes, can you?
No, there we go, on the side.
We can see your notes.
You can see my notes. Okay, do you know what? I will just stick with the paper ones. Thank you. Let me just get rid of that. Okay, let's try again. Okay, is that better?
Yes, perfect.
Cool. Okay, wonderful. So today I'm going to be speaking about Sri Sathya Sai Baba and the Sai organisation, as that's I'm a member of that community. So Bhagavan Sri Sathya Sai Baba is revered by millions of devotees all over the world as an incarnation of the divine, or an avatar is another word for that. His timeless universal teachings, exemplified by his life of selfless and pure love, has attracted seekers of truth from lots of walks of life, faith and cultures, inspiring them to turn and lead constructive, virtuous and godly lives. So a little bit of background about Sai Baba. He was born in India, in Puttaparthi, in November in 1926. There's a nice story around his birth. So his mother was drawing water from a well, and a blue light hit her stomach, and she was praying for a long time for a third child, so he would have been her third child, and that's how she conceived him. As he grew up, he was given the name Sathya, and his mum was really impressed by how much compassion he had, particularly for the poor and the downtrodden. Even as a toddler, he would insist that beggars would be served his food, even though the family themselves had quite limited means, and he would give what he had to others. So Sai Baba's mission, I think, is quite nice in the way that it doesn't sort of encourage people to change their religions, but it's more about making them better individuals and helping them to follow their faith sort of more in an improved manner. So he says, I've not come to disturb or destroy any faith, but to confirm each in his own faith, so that the Christian becomes a better Christian, the Muslim a better Muslim, and the Hindu a better Hindu. So his teachings don't sort of form their own religion, but it's sort of more a set of guidelines and principles to follow to lead a happier, more godly life. So it is regarded sort of under the umbrella of spirituality instead of religion. And Sai Baba has led by example himself, and he has sort of started and continued various service projects, and they stand as a testament to his love and compassion for humanity. So they include providing high-level medical care free of charge. So they're called super speciality hospitals, so really specialist treatments, all free. He has created schools, colleges and universities, again providing free education and also values-based education. And he's also established large drinking water supplies to countless villages, and has himself fed the poor on many occasions. So he has a quote that says, "My life is my message." So he's really, what he wants from us, he actually has shown himself, which I think is brilliant and a sign of a great leader. So a little bit about the Sathya Sai organisation. So this was founded by Sai Baba in the 1960s, and it's a service organisation with a spiritual base. So it promotes the harmony of all religions and unity of faith, and encourages the development of 5 key human values, which are love, truth, peace, right conduct, and non-violence. The Sai organisation itself comprises of different centres and groups run in different areas within the UK and across the entire world. So there's lots of different zones and lots of different groups. And the centre's aim is to foster and support the spiritual activities of its members. So in the UK and Ireland, we've got 78 Sai centres and groups currently, and each centre will have a chairperson and various wings that each member will contribute to, which I will talk about in a bit. So yeah, there are 4 sort of main wings that operate in centres and groups. And as I said, each activity in each wing is designed to sort of facilitate and help members in their own spiritual advancement. So we have the education wing. So this is for children from the age of 4 to 18. So Sai Baba's approach to education is called educare, and its emphasis is drawing out divine qualities, as I said, of those 5 values, which he believes are already latent within all individuals. So it started off just as a program within India, and then branched out to outside of that, the emphasis promoting unity of religions, the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man, learning about stories of the life of Sai Baba. You learn about different religions, their sacred texts. You do group devotional singing, so bhajans, a bit like Radha Mohan mentioned, and sort of meditation as well, jyoti meditations with a candle. That's also part of the syllabus. We then got a youth wing, so that's for 18-year-olds to 35-year-olds, and that's about encouraging young adults to lead purposeful lives by learning and practicing these values, as established by Sai Baba's life and message and work. And then the spiritual wing, so that's helping to nurture inner selves of members, and that's done through group activities, which I will speak about in a bit more detail later. And then the service wing, so obviously that's quite a big wing because the organisation is a service-based organisation, so it focuses on supporting others and local communities. And again, I will go into a little bit more detail about that in a bit. So in terms of our forms of worship, there's sort of several things that happen in the centres. So as I said, in the education wing, children will study the sacred literature of religions and sort of learn a little bit more about the religion. So we've covered the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, we've looked at the Torah and the Quran, group devotional singing as well, as I said. So the idea is when everyone sings in unison, sacred vibrations are produced and divine energies are released. And also we say that clapping while you sing sort of helps to negate any mental impurities such as negative thoughts. So I think, again, there's a similarity there maybe with the Hare Krishna movement. And then study circles are run. So we find that kind of delving into significance and meaning of what we read and sharing that with other people, with the emphasis of putting into practice what we've read is really beneficial. And that kind of chance to sort of talk about it as a group and hear other people's points of view. Chanting, so kind of similar to group devotional singing, where high frequency energies are arising as a result of reciting various names of God. And then meditation, so as I said before, the emphasis is more on Jyoti meditation, so light meditation, often with candles, and that's considered quite an important spiritual discipline that's supposed to help to gain inner peace. That's quite a big one. And then sadhana camps, so they're sort of organised over a period of 2 to 3 days with different activities such as prayer sessions, yoga sessions, meditation, breathing exercises, workshops and talks, all with the aim of building discipline in individuals and kind of improving character development. So a little bit about my journey. So I was introduced to this organisation when I was born. As Saidhanya said, I'm half Sri Lankan, Tamil and half Welsh. And my parents heard about Sai Baba from family and friends and took me to India as a child to see him. We joined the Sai Centre when I was 3 and have been regularly attending every Sunday since then, although we have changed centres because we've moved house in that time. And it's quite a special thing for me. I'm 26 now, and I actually met my fiance through the Sai Centre and Saidhanya, so it's been really good for building relations with people, and it's allowed us to I'll talk a bit more about service projects, but we've created a service project from our relations as well. And yeah, it's really central to who I am as an individual. So I'm a trainee clinical psychologist, and a lot of the values that I've learned from SSC, so the education part, and the service-oriented side of things has really impacted on me as a person. So it's something really important to me. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me. And then community activities. So as I said, it's a service organisation. Service is really key. And there are some nice quotes from Sai Baba. So he says that service to man is service to God, and hands that help are holier than lips that pray. So as a centre, we are involved in lots of different community activities throughout the year. So AgeLink is a charity that supports loneliness relief for the elderly through day trips and events. So boat trips, we do afternoon tea parties with food and entertainment, and Christmas parties and bingo nights. That's always good fun. Feed the Homeless is something I created with my fiance. So we have a group of youth that support us to cook a hot vegetarian meal every month for 60 to 80 homeless individuals in London and Holborn. And then we go and deliver that to them, and also sort of speak to them and see how they are and try and signpost them to other services to support them. We help with hamper packing, so we purchase items and create hampers containing clothing and food items for those in need. We provide food parcels and donations to food banks for local wider distribution. And the medical camps as well, we're involved in, so sending volunteers in different professional fields to hold camps in countries that need support. So we might have a dental camp, or not, in sort of something related to kind of eye care, opticians, and then overseas aid as well, so disaster relief packages, and also sending volunteers to support with that as well. In terms of kind of our engagement with other religions, as I said, I think part of that is under the education aspect. So when the children learn about different religions and developing an understanding and respect for other people's religions and cultures. And we also organise speakers, a bit like this forum, where we hear from different people from different backgrounds and cultures, which is always really interesting. And then I think Saidhanya asked me to touch upon these sorts of beliefs about karma, birth, death and food. So I think similar again to what Radha Mohan said about karma, the kind of cycle of birth and death, but Sai Baba actually says that we can kind of change that, so it's not something that's fixed. which is, I think, quite nice, that, you know, by maybe good deeds, that's something that we can modify. But he says that it is the cause of a warrior born and our life on earth, and that's the purpose. And that the devotion to God is kind of the fastest way to get out of that ongoing cycle of birth and death. And also, so vegetarianism is quite a big thing, but in the Sai fold, not everybody is vegetarian. So Sarabha does talk about how kind of eating animals might mean that we develop negative qualities from that, but not everybody is vegetarian, although a large proportion are. I think that's it. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Serena, and congratulations on your engagement.
Thank you.
And every joy. And it's lovely to hear two speakers, young speakers, talking about with such ardor about their life within and their life and living. So I'm going to ask Saidhanya now to talk. She has joined us once before, and we were so enthralled by the energy that her community was putting to the community during COVID, that we couldn't resist saying, come back, please, tell us more. So the floor is yours, Saidhanya.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, Serena and Radha Mohan. Those are really interesting speeches you gave. But now things are going to turn a little bit more traditional and, very traditional in the way that I practice my Hinduism. So if I share my screen really quickly, share. Okay, hopefully you guys can see that. So the way I was introduced to Hinduism was I was introduced to it from birth. Both sets of my grandparents are really very heavily religious. We originate from Sri Lanka, and our entire family was very involved in temples over there. But when it came down to the Sri Lankan Civil War, my paternal grandparents decided to make the move to the UK to escape the war in chance of a better life for our family. So when we came here, my granddad is in the middle, in the green. He came here, and him and his wife, my grandmother, there was nowhere for them to pray. There was no permanent place of worship, and they wanted to practice their religion exactly how they'd practiced their faith back in Sri Lanka. So it came to the point where they decided to establish a temple in Stonleleigh, where the rituals would be followed strictly, exactly how it would be in Sri Lanka. So these are pictures of back in the day when the temple was established, with my grandparents very proudly standing there with their temple and our chariot, because it was a very important thing for people moving to the UK to have somewhere to pray exactly how they wanted to. So we've heard that Serena's and Radha Mohan's, where their communities have kind of derived from, are from reformed movements of Hinduism. But with my branch of Hinduism, it's called Saivism, and it's very traditional, and it's something that we believe has derived exactly from the Vedas, which is one of our holy scriptures. So Saivism is essentially the emphasis on Lord Shiva. So Lord Shiva is known as the destroyer, and his wife is goddess Parvati. She is the goddess of power. So what it's believed is that Lord Shiva revealed the Vedas to the people. These people became saints and sages. They used to meditate in the mountains, and they would pass on these holy teachings and holy mantras to people, and it basically just passed down through generations. The religion withstood many kingdoms, many wars, and we call them sangams, which are like periods of time of like different kingdoms, basically. So that's how the religion survived throughout the last few, centuries. The ultimate goal is very similar to what Serena and Radha Mohan said. It's about merging with God and recognizing that you are God. There is a big emphasis on renunciation and giving up worldly desires. However, when it comes to actually practicing Hinduism, it's very, practicing Saivism in particular, it's very heavy on deity worship. So for us as Saivites, we are very focused on a family of 4 gods. We've got Lord Shiva in the middle, who I said is our main god, his wife, goddess Parvati, the goddess of strength, and their 2 sons, Lord Ganesh, who you might be familiar with. He's the remover of obstacles, and his little brother is Lord Murugan. So in all our worship at the temple, we always worship these 4 gods, along with many others, but it's very much kind of focused on these 4. In terms of our worship at the temple, it's very ritualistic, which is quite different to Serena and Radha Mohan's, their way of worship. It's very much reciting the holy mantras, holy Vedas. It's about performing hormons, which are sacrificial fires where where the priest throws grains into the fire as a sacrifice, basically to bring about divine energy so that it can be shared with others and passed through the gods. We also have something called an abhishekam, which is something that happens daily. It's a holy bathing ritual for the gods and goddesses at the temple, where devotees, I've got a picture actually, where we pour milk, honey, fruit, various things on our deities, on our idols, and it's believed that when you witness that, you are blessed and blessed with good thoughts and good prosperity as well. In terms of our holy texts, so Radha Mohan had they have placed a very big emphasis on the Bhagavad Gita. But if you came to our temple and you said, "Oh, do you know about the Bhagavad Gita?" Not many people would know too much about it at all, which is quite interesting. So that's quite a big difference there. For us, it's very much to do with the Vedas. We have a set of beliefs called the Tirumurai, which basically aligns out our rituals, and it's basically the Vedas and the Upanishads, which we believe in and which we follow. In terms of festivals as well, this is quite interesting. So typically people associate Diwali as being a Hindu festival, but however, for us as Saivites, it really isn't a big thing for us at all. It's just a day where like our grandparents might give us some money and some new clothes, but that's pretty much it. We wouldn't necessarily go to the temple at all for that, but instead we have loads of other different festivals. So we have a special festival called Kandasasti, which is a 6-day long festival for Lord Murugan. And Lord Murugan is a god that is very much popular in South India and Sri Lanka. So for people within the ISKCON, the ISKCON movement, or even the Sathya Sai organization, it's something that they wouldn't be too familiar with. So that's something quite cool. In terms of how we practice our in terms of how we practice our faith, Saivism is very focused on ritualistic worship and attending temple services. So you can see here we have a picture with loads of ladies coming to do a puja, which is, I think it's Varalakshmi puja, which is a puja for women. Basically, women are deemed as embodiments of wealth and beauty. So it's a special puja that people join in there. So we attend the temple. Most people attend every Friday, every full moon, whenever there's a special occasion, people are there. But however, you can also pray at home as well. So many people will have, a shrine room in their house, which is probably similar to what people in the Sathya Sai organization and the ISKCON movement will have as well. If you can't attend to the temple, you just attend worship at home. And sometimes we sing bhajans, which is what both the other movements do as well, but we don't do that too often. It's very much singing individual songs called Thevarams, which are specific to Saivism, which is something that we do. In terms of communal activities, so as with the other two communities of Hinduism, Saivism does play play a big role in helping others and giving food to the poor. So part of temple worship is giving something called Annadanam, which is basically after every puja, we're told to give food to the congregation, and we invite as many people as we can to eat that food. So in Sri Lanka, typically next to a temple, you have a massive hall, and there pretty much like anyone from off the street or anyone passing by is invited to take part and have some food. So food is kind of considered a form of wealth, and it's something that we share with others, and that forms a big part of Saivism. In terms of our beliefs with karma, birth, death, and animals, and gender and caste, it gets quite interesting here. So we also believe in karma. That plays a huge role in how we dictate every action that we do. We're always thinking about karma. Is this a good thing to do, or is it a bad thing? If it's a bad thing, then something bad might come to me later on. But also in terms of birth, we believe that children are a gift from God. We believe that every child is a child of God, which is similar to every religion, really. However, with death, so Radha Mohan placed an emphasis on how when they believe the soul dies and passes on, it merges with Lord Krishna. Whereas for us, we believe that our goal is to merge with Lord Shiva. So that's very kind of contrasting aspects there. Our aim is to merge with Lord Shiva and to end the cycle of reincarnation. In terms of animals as well, so as these guys said, vegetarianism is a big part of Hinduism. Most people are vegetarian. As Serena said, not everyone is. But what's quite cool about Hinduism in general is that every god has their own animal companion. So every god kind of has like a pet best friend, which is why there's actually quite a big emphasis on animals within Hinduism. So if you visit our temple, you'll see like loads of little statues or little kind of paintings of animals with their gods. So that's always really quite lovely to have a look at. In terms of caste, so the caste system is not as strong as it used to be. However, even in temples in the UK, such as our temple, we do kind of we separate the Brahmin caste, which are the highest caste. They're the priest caste. We are very respectful towards them because they are the priests and they conduct our puja services. But in terms of, they're kind of like the only caste that we would differentiate from, whereas everyone else is kind of just like, we're all just kind of mingled together. Whereas traditionally in Sri Lanka, maybe like 30 or 40 years ago, everyone would know like your caste and you'd kind of stick to your, like the way that you'd pray in like a different way. Like certain castes would have certain temples, so you wouldn't go to a temple of a lower caste or a higher caste. But in the UK, that's completely gone. It's pretty much everyone is all for one, except the Brahmins, because they are the people that we hire to do the puja services. So we're respectful towards them. So for example, they wouldn't eat our food, but we can eat their food, but they wouldn't eat our food. They wouldn't, if they were like coming into our house, like, so for example, we had a priest come into our house the other day, and my mom had to get like special cups for them. So like they wouldn't drink water from like a normal cup, like we had to get special ones. So that's something that's quite interesting. And finally, in terms of gender, so this is quite interesting because in Saivism, we believe that we've got Lord Shiva and Goddess Parvati, and they are both equals. So our temple is actually dedicated to the female goddess. So women are deemed as really important to us within Hinduism. However, our priests are all generally male. We don't get female priests. And when it comes to like performing pujas, and like participating and like making food, making garlands, that's something that definitely the women get involved with. The reason that women aren't priests is essentially it's this the whole idea of that when a woman attains age and gets her period, for that period of time when she's on her period, she's deemed as impure, which is why she can't go to the temple. So even today, so when I'm on my period, or like when my cousins or anyone is on their period, we don't go to the temple for those 5 days, and then we wait and then we'll go afterwards. I think it's just this whole thing of cleanliness, but also the way my mum explained it to me was that it's a time for me to rest because it's a time where I'm in pain, and it's a time where all I do is just focus on just staying at home and just kind of relaxing before I go out and go into the temple again. So yeah, that is pretty much a whistle-stop tour of Saivism, with very quick differences with the Sathya Sai organisation and ISKCON. So yeah, thank you very much.
Well, I think you three of you have been absolutely marvellous because you've covered a lot. And just as Kaza's getting ready to do the question sides and help us and go through the list, I've got one today for you from Radha Mohan. It was interesting. The first picture you showed, you had, it seemed to be ladies or females in them, but they looked as if they had a halo. And is there a connection to that, to your saying that the first part of your name is a female name? it was just intriguing, and I apologize for my blunder, not not calling you the full name. But
that's all right, don't worry about it.
That's my ignorance. But
you are forgiven. You are forgiven.
Yes, but it looked like on the first picture there was like a halo around the ladies in the picture, the very first picture you showed us. And I just wondered whether there was some connotation about ladies or the female within your comforts.
Okay, well, I can't talk much specifically about the picture, because there's always that chance that maybe it was, or it may be that those ladies, maybe their saris were reflecting against the light of the camera or something. However, the concept of halos in artwork are similar to that of Christianity, actually, where halos, of course, whatever agenda they are, whether it's it represents saintlyhood, or an aura. So that's there. So maybe those ladies in that picture were particularly saintly. I don't know I can't comment on that. However, in terms of the role of the female in northern part of India, let's say, not Sri Lanka, but let's say most of India, we feel with Radha, Krishna, Sita, Rama, Lakshmi, Narayan. In other words, these are couples, divine couple, Parvati, Shiva or something, where the female is mentioned first. Sita is a female name, and Ram is the male, Sita Ram. And the idea really is that although God is male, in the sense that Lord Shiva or Lord Krishna is male, he's not alone, and his energy is female, and they're both equal, but their roles are slightly different. It's a very different way from when compared with, say, an Abrahamic kind of tradition. But the idea is that there is space in the Hindu traditions for femininity and goddesses as well. Like Mother Nature, for example, is female, is personified as the goddess Durga. So you do get female divinities, let's say, in the Hindu or the Hindu tradition, for want of a better word. Although generally it's the original male. The original god main god is, let's say, male, but his counterpart, his accomplice, is female, and the two are one. I know that sounds difficult to understand. According to other traditions, may find that difficult. It's a different tradition in Hinduism where, I suppose, one can be many and many can be one. But just to counteract what I heard before, it's not in our tradition that our souls would merge into God or become God, but rather become servants or aspects of God, just like an atom on one's body. Or it's not that we actually become God, but certainly there is a sense of oneness. I hope that helps. Yeah,
it does. Thank you. I'm going to ask Calder now to cope with the questions. And can I pass to you now, Calder?
Yep, absolutely. So we had a question from Stephen, and that's for Radha, because I know you need to leave shortly anyway.
Thank you.
And his question is there an official governance for Hinduism, and how are Hindus guided in their faith?
Right. Okay. Governance is an interesting one. Now, the first thing is Hinduism itself refers to the culture of ancient India, which is more, before about the 12th century, was known as Dharma or Sanatan Dharma. Which basically means the eternal religion or the constitutional position for humankind. It's not even a religion, it's more of a way of life, a consciousness. But in India, there are what you call paramparas, or which means different lines, different traditions going back. And I think we heard about some of them today, didn't we? But there is no one single founder of Hinduism, although they can be traced back many, many thousands of years indeed, but it would ultimately trace back. There's no, it's not like, say, the Catholic Church where you've got one single governor, called the Pope. In India, you've got lots of popes and lots, like miniature popes, if you like. In terms of governance, that's why you have particular traditions. I've got a particular institution, so to speak, but obviously they'll be governed according to that particular institution. I hope that helps in some way. What was the second part of the question, if I may?
How are Hindus guided in their faith?
Right. Guided, I suppose you could say there are, one thing that is quite prominent within the Hindu tradition are and I think that this was touched on earlier as well, the great amount of respect that is given for teachers or gurus or acharyas. So I would say that they're guided by acharyas, which means great teachers, special teachers who may who are specially empowered spiritual teachers. There are different qualifications for those people. One of them is that they have to appear or be part of a teachings of what we call a bona fide parampara, or what we call a sampradaya. They can't have just made everything up. They have to come from a succession of other teachers of approved teachings, if that makes any sense to you. I hope it's a lot to cram in, I know. But that's basically in a nutshell how I can describe it to you right now without going into too much detail.
That's great, thank you. I think Nabil, you've got your hand up. Did you want to say something? You're on mute, Nabil. And then Stephen will come to you. I think you wanted a follow-up question. Let Nabil go first.
Thank you. I mean, the three talks are fascinating and I'm very grateful. What the name I haven't heard in the three talks is Sri Krishna, whom I think is considered by at least throughout the world as being the prophet originating the whole concept of Hinduism. And that brings me to the real question is, what I heard from the three of you is almost the same. And I'm just wondering, why is there the three of you in different sects and probably more sects? You do not have the differences that are quite basic as in Islam, where we have the Shia and the Sunni, or even Christianity, where we have Catholics and others, or in Judaism and so on. You don't seem to have that real schism or difference. So why do we need all these different Hinduisms?
Can I answer that? Because I've got to go in about 5 minutes. So if I can respond first, sorry to put in. Is that okay? Is everyone okay with that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I think first of all, Sri Krishna was mentioned. I mentioned it because I'm a devotee of Krishna. That's the answer to that one. Yes, we see Lord Krishna as the speaker of the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita means song. Bhagavad means Godhead. So Bhagavad Gita means the song of God. Yeah. But anyway, why do we need different forms of Hinduism? At the end of the day, it's like this. People are people. People have different natures. I'll give you an example. There's a difference between, I suppose, what you could say forms of Hinduism in South India when compared with North India, and there are historical reasons for that. Due to foreign occupation and so forth in North India, that didn't happen in South India. And also you're dealing with, just like in Europe, for example, there are different languages and different cultures. In India, there's something like 120 different languages. So it's not a country, it's a continent. So to give you an example, and then you've got sub-dialects running into many more. And going back at least, say, 5,000 years. So as you can imagine, due to human nature and as a whole, people will tend to differ. Now, thousands and thousands of years ago, would you get to the origins of Hinduism? The question is, was there more similarities then? Was there more unity of cultures then compared to now? And although there were vast ancient kingdoms, in fact, forms of Hinduism were actually global, actually around the world, if you trace it back far enough. But naturally, there's always been difference between people, and it's not a bad thing. Everyone has their different perspective. Everyone has their different karma, as it were. People get born. We say you get born into a particular situation in a particular family due to your behavior in your previous life. So, of course, you may be born in next life into a different religion or a different culture around the world. So now, one thing about Hinduism, which I believe is fairly good, is that there's actually, in India more than anywhere else, there's a vast array of different kind of traditions. But relatively speaking, within Hinduism itself, there's quite a lot of peace between them as well. There's so many different expressions that it's almost down to individual villages or individual families, because the heights of it the levels that is practiced by swamis or even babas of the Himalayan mountains is very high in terms of asceticism and renunciation. But you can't expect that everybody is going to want to live in a cave and do their meditation and grow a beard or something. Everyone's on a different level, a different stage of life. Not everyone can be a priest, as I think we heard earlier. So there's people who have different natures, different karma. And the idea of Sanatana Dharma, or what people call Hinduism today, is to follow to the best of your ability, according to your gender, according to your varna or your occupation, and according to your age, whether you're married or whether you're a monk or whether you are a renunciate or whether you're elderly. Everyone's dharma is slightly different. I hope that helps.
Yes.
Thank you, Radha. And Stephen, did you want to expand on your question to Radha before he leaves?
No, just to say thank you very much. I'm much obliged for your the time and the presentation that you gave.
Thank you. Hare Krishna, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Radha. And then going back to the chat now, Jeff, I can see your hand is up, but I'm just going to go through the chat questions in case so we don't miss them first, and then I'll come back to you. So Nabil, you asked a question, does this mean he was an immaculate conception? And I think that was for Serena about Sathya Sai Baba, if I've got that right.
Yes, I think it's because it was a sort of blue bolt, and that's how he was born. So I assume this is an immaculate conception, and I had the answer.
Yes,
I leave it to you.
Yes, I messaged Nabil. I saw that. Yes, I think it would be seen as an immaculate conception. Yeah, as I said, she was praying for a long time to conceive, but she didn't, and then this blue light hit her, and then she realized she was pregnant after that. So yeah, I think that would be considered that.
Thank you. And then there's a question for Saidhanya. What role does the priest play in the community? Does he have authority?
So the role of the priest is basically to conduct the rituals. He doesn't necessarily have authority, especially not within the temple. Normally, like within our temple and within every temple, they're pretty much just seen as employees of the temple, and their job is to conduct the rituals according to the Holy Scriptures. And I think that's something where, especially like within my branch of Hinduism, Saivism, we don't necessarily have that kind of person to go to ask for help. So like I know in Christianity, like you'd go to like your pastor or your vicar. In Islam, you'd go to your imam for advice. We don't necessarily have that in Hinduism. Like I can't imagine being in a crisis and going to one of our priests and asking for help, like what should I do? The only thing that they'd come up with would be like, oh, do a puja, chant some mantras, and that will solve your problem. So especially during COVID, it was quite difficult. I know for many Hindus, because we didn't really have anyone to turn to, which is where organizations such as the Sathya Sai movement and Radha Mohan's movement with the Bhaktivedanta Manor, they come in really useful, because when Hinduism unites within a crisis such as COVID, we take on each other's kind of lessons. And I know during COVID, I was reading a lot of Sathya Sai Baba's works and his discourses, trying to like get advice and, you know, figure out how we can get out of this really difficult time. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
That's great, thank you. And now over to you, Jeff.
You were saying that there is not really a very effective caste system now, except that the Brahmins are very, very respected and different. And what I have found is that, you know, when I meet Hindu people who are in England or anything like that, then they say, well, no caste system. But as soon as I get to my students, and I had a lot of Indian students who go back to India, they seem to be very, very stuck into staying with their own kind, and a lot of worry about who marries whom in which family. It doesn't seem to be as free as perhaps we would like it to be. Sort of more enlightened Hindus would like it to be. Would you like to comment?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, I think, like, for example, if you were to think of like my grandparents' generation, for them caste was a big thing. Like for my dad, for like my grandma, who my dad was going to marry, whether the woman was going to be in the same caste, that was a big deal. But if you think about my parents and them, like, and me thinking about getting married, they really don't care. Like, caste doesn't mean anything to anyone anymore, except obviously I wouldn't be able to marry a Brahmin because they're a caste higher than us, and they wouldn't marry me either. But I think back in Sri Lanka, like when we go there on holiday and stuff, and when I've kind of stayed there for long periods of time, like even their caste the whole concept has kind of died down. It's not as strong as it used to be. Everyone, I guess it's just as time evolves, people, like, we all kind of come together as one, and everyone kind of mingles around with each other. You can't really differentiate between one caste and the other caste. So I think that in that sense, like, it's really good that that's happening, because it just like removes that form of discrimination, especially when it comes to worshipping. Because the worst thing is that you want to be able to pray and you want to be able to express your faith, and you can't because you were born into a caste and there's nothing you can do about it to get out of it. So it's really good that that's kind of being put aside and overlooked, so that we're all seen as children of God in an equal manner.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask another, or is that not?
Yeah, sure. There aren't any more questions in the chat, so you can.
Okay, well, another question is, you talk of wanting to escape from the ritual of birth, life, death, rebirth, and that to want to escape from that, so that, as it were, to die is almost escaping into the, I don't know what you escape into and when you're reborn, but you do have this idea of merging with the deity in the long run. And it was interesting that you said, you know, some people wanted to merge with Shiva and some other people wanted to, I don't know whether anybody wanted to merge with Brahma, who you can merge with. But so that you do see there being very distinct deities, do you, with whom you might merge? And do you really want to escape forever this round, or do you want to be involved in an eternal round, some of you? Once you've merged, is that it?
Ask Serena, because she's maybe gotten like to answer.
Yeah, I can start us off. I think so. In the Sai fold, there's no sort of focus on specific deities. So we sort of see, I mean, Sai Baba is kind of, I guess, the teacher that's taught us these things, but we see God as all these forms of all these deities encapsulated in this form of God. So for us, merging, it's just merging with God. They're kind of all within that. So I think that's probably slightly different to Saidhanya and Saivism in that respect. Don't know Saivism.
This is one God.
Yes, it's kind of, yeah, just all those deities are forms of the one God, I suppose, is how we see it. Yeah,
so you'd see them as aspects of God.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess you want to merge with God because it's seen as this cycle of birth and death is something you don't want, because it's almost like a punishment. So we talked about karma and the idea that your past actions are, you know, what you've done in your past is what you have to live through. So you want to escape that because you want this sort of eternal peace, and it's just supposed to be happy and things like that. So it's a goal to be reached, yeah, and seen as a positive thing.
And Saidhanya, how do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, Serena's absolutely right. I mean, within Hinduism, like we every Hindu knows that although we have loads of deities, it's all ultimately one God. However, within Saivism, we place a big emphasis on Shiva. For us, Shiva is our be all and end all. So within like a typical funeral, all the hymns, all the prayers, it's all dedicated to Lord Shiva. Although we know that we're not necessarily just merging with Shiva, we're merging with God as a whole, whether that be Krishna, Ganesh, Lakshmi, Parvati, anyone. But for us, we just place that emphasis on Shiva because that's how the rituals have dictated it to be. But I mean, like for me and like for my family, we all know that, yeah, although we pray to Shiva and we want to merge with him, it's about merging with God as a whole, exactly how Serena said. So yeah.
Could I ask a personal question? Because you, three of you are quite different. Radha Mohan has got a very distinctive design on his forehead leading onto his nose, and you have a small dot, but Serena hasn't. So I know it sounds silly, but it's I mean, it's something very distinctive and very personal, but you know, sort of what do they mean?
So I was laughing because I should sort of be wearing one as well. So I guess from the Sai organisation point of view, sometimes people wear the bindi, and it's sort of seen to ward off the evil eye. So to sort of protect the individual. I think sometimes as well people draw like beauty spots on themselves with a similar kind of thing. And I think it's called the third eye. Maybe Saidhanya will explain that further. But again, sort of maybe the Sai organisation sits in the middle where some people wear it, some people don't wear it. And I'm laughing because I asked Saida, should I put one on today? And she said, don't worry about it. But I'll let her talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, for us within Saivism, it's really important. Whenever we go to the temple, we always put on a bindi. So this area here on our forehead, the middle part, that signifies the third eye, which we believe is an area in your body which gives you the power of discrimination. So we believe this is like the focal point of your body. This is where the most energy comes from. And we believe this area gives you the ability between what's right and what's wrong. So whenever we go to the temple, boy or girl, we always go in either with like holy ash or like kumkum powder. We'd always mark this area. For me, the reason why it's black is because with women in particular, you wear a black bindi until you're married, and then when you're married you wear a red one. So like my mum and stuff, she'd wear a red one, but for me I'd wear a black one until I'm married. But like I know sometimes, especially living in the UK, like I'd love to wear a bindi everywhere. I'd love to just put this on and walk around the streets, but you know, like you're gonna get weird looks, which is why like I only really wear it when I'm like doing a call like this or when I'm representing my faith, and definitely when I'm going to the temple. So yeah, that's a bit about my bindi.
And the Krishna one.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
distinct.
You may not be able to see me, but I can hear you, and I hope you can hear me.
Your
as well.
picture, you don't have one, but you did in person.
Yes, I did. I did have in my picture there, but it doesn't show up. But it's called tilak, and the vertical lines on my forehead means I'm a member of a Vaishnav tradition, which is different from the Shiva tradition. It's more like we would say that Lord Vishnu or Lord Krishna is the supreme. So there's a bit of a difference there. But overall, the forehead in the Hindu tradition is a sacred part of the body, where it's like a badge, if you like, an ID badge, and people can see what sect you belong to. But the meaning of tilak is to remind people that your body is a temple of God, and to use it for holy purposes. You see, that's a practical purpose of tilak as well. To remind, I suppose it's a holy marking, just like Christians have on Ash Wednesday. They have the cross on their forehead, or when a baby gets christened. So you find that it's fairly a common thing actually throughout the world in different forms.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Margaret, can I ask another question?
Of course you may, please.
Thank you. In the Hindu scriptures, you have the two main works, as we heard, the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishad. Now, I've read a lot about in these books, and I realize that the Bhagavad Gita particularly is that story of the hero, the big
Shiva,
military man, and Krishna trying to take him by the hand through a process of changing his attitude, as well as showing the various emotions that are available in that personality, and at the end the result is very good. The Upanishad, on the other hand, is is a lot more spiritual teachings. So we've got these two big scriptures which are marvelous in their individual right, and one of them dealing with how we can work our way through life and dealing with people, and the other one almost talking about how we deal with ourselves and our spirituality and our qualities and character and so on. do you see a balance between those two? How do you balance the two scriptures?
Can I respond to that?
Please do.
Yeah. Okay. Then, as I may cut in and out a little bit. I'm in a car, but I'm not the driver. But still, it may mean the signal goes in and out. So forgive me for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Bhagavad Gita, the balance between the Upanishads and the Gita is that the Bhagavad Gita is indeed just as holy and so forth as the Upanishads. But the Bhagavad Gita was spoken in a certain historical concept, context, where Arjuna, who was this great warrior, was about to fight a war. But of course, he turned to Krishna for advice because it was a conundrum, obviously. And what follows that conundrum is this conversation where Krishna comes out of all these teachings. However, because Arjuna was a warrior and he was in a situation where the enemy was clear, the aggressor, and was clearly in the wrong, Krishna ends up by saying, well, you are a warrior and this is your dharma to fight, because we've tried everything to avoid this war, but the enemies are in the wrong. So in other words, the Bhagavad Gita is not promoting pacifism. However, within the Gita, you've got all kinds of teachings, the soul, reincarnation, different forms of yoga, different levels of devotion, and above all, bhakti, which means devotion to God. So even if someone is fighting on the battlefield, someone's in the army or whatever, if that's their constitution is to be in the army, even that can be offered to God, but only if that war is just. Now, obviously, we would say in this day and age, there are very few wars no war is good, of course, but this was a particular context which would take too long for me to explain, but it's part of the epic called the Mahabharata, which is extremely well known in India. That's what I have to say about that.
Thank you.
Jeff, you want to ask something?
Yes, I was going to say, do you have readings from any one of these texts in church or anything? Then the Vedas? I know we've mentioned the Bhagavad Gita and we've mentioned the Upanishads, but there's also the Vedas. And are there specific texts that you tend to read in public or in church or something?
I'll take this one. So the Vedas is really important within Saivism, but the thing with the Vedas is that it's written in Sanskrit, and so your average Hindu does not know Sanskrit and would not, wouldn't learn it either. So in our temple, or within, most of like the Saivite temples across the world, the priests will chant the Vedas as they're performing the puja service. But for us as devotees, we wouldn't really know what he's saying because it's in a different language. So that's something that's always really interesting.
Do you not have translations?
So there are translations out there, but it's just something that no one really takes an active kind of effort to go and learn Sanskrit and to understand the Vedas. We just kind of trust the fact that it's there, the priests are chanting it, and it's all in praise of God. So within like a typical puja service every day at the temple, there's sections of each Veda. So there's 4 main ones. There's sections which are recited by the priests, but in terms of what we'd recite and what we'd chant, they'd kind of be like hymns or songs in Tamil, which is a language that we speak, but it wouldn't be the Vedas directly. However, with Serena, that might be slightly different in the Sathya Sai organization.
Yeah, thanks, Ida. I was just going to say, so there are opportunities in the Sai organization to learn the Vedas. So I started a long time ago. I wasn't very good. I didn't stick at it, unfortunately, but my mum is on a course at the moment. So we do have people that do translate it. So we learn, and the pronunciation can be quite tricky, and the people that train us are very particular about it. And so they should be, because otherwise you're changing the meaning of what you're saying. But yeah, it can be difficult, but you learn sort of different sections, and there's sort of a way to progress through the sections and an order in which you have to do it and sort of be tested on it. But they do provide translations, which is really useful, so you know and understand what it is that you're saying, you know, and with the hope that will increase the vibrations when you're chanting them. So we do have opportunity to learn the Vedas, and in terms of things like with the Bhagavad Gita, as I said, with the education classes that we run, children will learn particular parts of the Bhagavad Gita and kind of again understanding the meaning behind that and how they can apply that to their life, which is really important as well.
Thank you. I think there's a question, Calder, you're going to ask.
Yeah, so Kerry's just asked a question for Radha Mohan. When you were searching, did you already have an underlying faith, and what made you decide on Krishna in the end? Was it the fact that you just went backpacking with your friends, or did you have a spiritual moment?
How's it gone?
You're on mute, Radha Mohan.
Sorry, can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I must apologize. I've just had to do 20 minutes ago. I had to do a few chores, but I'm back in action now. Yeah, okay, it's a good question. No, it was a lot deeper and a lot more of a slower process than what I made out than just going backpacking around India. That was just the edited version. I was from in terms of my religious background, I guess you could say it was Church of England, roughly speaking. I even used to sing in a choir. But I think by the time I was a teenager, I wanted to dig deeper. I felt that Buddhism, for example, and other such things, interestingly enough, including Sai Baba. I read a book by Sai Baba, incidentally, because my nan had actually been to Puttaparthi in South India, which is actually where Sai Baba has his ashram. And I read the book. However, that got me into Hinduism, actually, interestingly enough. But when I read the books of Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, the founder of the Hare Krishna movement, for me that was answered, was better for me personally. And I won't go into the details why. So this was a gradual process, which took, I would say, something like 7 years, to the point where I guess by the time I was 22 and I was a drama student in Manchester, I'd felt that I no longer wanted to be a thespian or prima donna, whatever. I saw that world in the big city, and I decided it wasn't so nice. It's just full of different egos, and I felt I wanted to take the spiritual direction, and I got involved in the Hare Krishna drama group, and that's what took me around India the year after that, by 1994-ish. Toured India, Jaipur, Gujarat, Mathura, Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Bengal, and Maharashtra, all around North and Central India. And so that's it. I felt that was enough for me, really. Does that help? Does that answer the question? It was a bit more than a backpack, actually. I've been to India
very
myself.
Modest.
I know, terrible. But I've been to India myself about 13 times. So I guess that's quite a lot. But not recently because of COVID, of course.
Any more questions? There's no more questions in the chat, but if anybody wants to ask, we've got 5 minutes.
So you mentioned, all of you mentioned music, that it's the essence of your gatherings. Is there a common piece of music that you all sing, or do you all have your own sections of music that bring you closer to your gods?
I think they're kind of slightly different, but there are similarities in that maybe you're reciting different names of gods, and the kind of repetition is supposed to be building up those energies to be released and shared with everybody. Yeah, I think there are similarities and differences. I don't think there's one sort of set piece of music that we all sing that is the same, but kind of the idea behind it, I think, is similar.
There's a lot of similar, what we call culture, the concept of mantra, the concept of Vedic hymns or prayers that are written in the local language or something like that. The concept of bhajan kirtan is fairly well known across India in slightly different cultural forms. But there's no, like she said there, there's no kind of what you call exact song that would be for everybody, because that, again, because the culture is too vast for that.
And what age You can be as young as 3 and become into the faith. Is that right? Or do you don't have baptism, or do you, or at a moment of acceptance at an age?
I think if someone was 3 years old, it would probably be more up to the parents than wouldn't it, at that age? There are various
Saidhanya was there when she was 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Serena was brought into the movement when she was like 3 or 4. It was just part of like my like all my ancestors. Yeah, like we've all just been Hindu. But there's no kind of special ceremony that we have to kind of like that you formally become a Hindu. Like for us, you're just a Hindu.
Wow.
But it's the thing with it is that it's not so strict. Like you don't have to be a Hindu that like you have to go to the temple every day. Like you can be a Hindu and not go to the temple. Like it's very flexible in that sense. You can literally pray in the car, pray at home, pray wherever. Like it's very flexible. So being a Hindu, like it's not necessarily a religion, it's more of a way of life. So yeah.
I think for my perspective, it's slightly different, and it probably goes without saying, because I wasn't born into it, as we know. So I think just like anyone who's a quote unquote, it's not, I don't like the word convert, but let's use it just for clarity's sake, so we all know roughly what it means. So I guess you could say I've converted. It's not something that I was born with or my parents brought me up with. And so from my perspective, there are certain, what you would call, there'll be a point where I would not be considered a practitioner anymore. For example, eating meat, for example, would be enough to convince my peers that I'd kind of lost the plot a little bit. I'd no longer be considered a member, because I wouldn't be following the rules. And what to speak of eating beef, that would be an utter no-no. Absolutely not. Or any meat at all, and I would be considered to be off the page, because our form of Vaishnavism is quite strict in some ways. It's quite, ironically, it's quite orthodox, despite the fact there are members all around the world from different backgrounds.
That's interesting.
It is interesting, yeah.
I think Ron has he's had his hand up a few times.
Sorry. The concept of karma, it seems to be a little different between all of you, and I believe karma is something you sort of carry with you, and good karma and bad karma. Can anybody give a final sort of summing up of where does karma get you? Is this the thing that determines where you move up and down the ladder? Are there points added to your karma, points taken away? How do you conceive karma? Each of you.
Would you like to go first, sir? I'll go first, but I don't want to hog the show, you see. But
you're not hogging the show.
All right, okay. All right, so karma basically translates into English as action, actually. And, you have different types of karma, but to keep it simple, karma means action and the results of action. That's its literal translation. Now, how you unpack that, according to your different cultural tradition is another matter. But the way I understand it is that karma means performing action which would get you some type of result, i.e., as you sow, so shall you reap. And the idea, however, obviously good karma will get you a better birth in your next life, but to become free from the cycle of birth and death, which is the ultimate aim, to go back to God, if you like, is to be free from karma, both good and bad. Because to love God and to serve God is beyond action, because it's from the heart. You see what I mean? So performing good rituals or giving money to a priest, giving in charity, this is all action, which is fine. But without that at the heart, you're still going to lack that qualification to become free from the cycle of birth and death. Therefore, you're still in that cycle of karma. So karma is practical action. But religion, or the aim of religion, is to actually go beyond karma and to be ambassadors of the heart to love God. I hope that's my answer.
Yeah, I think Radha Mohan, that's a really nice explanation, and I would agree with that. And the only thing I would add from my perspective from the Sai organisation, as I said in my presentation, is we see it as something that isn't fixed though. So that you know, through good deeds and devotion to God, so with those sort of spiritual practices and forms of worship, you can sort of, I guess, negate those things and improve your karma, so that maybe in your next life, you're kind of closer to God and closer to that ultimate point of wanting to merge with him. So although it's something that you bring into this life and you take away, you can kind of change it from our perspective.
Yeah, I think both of those explanations pretty much hit the nail on the head. I mean, to put it very simply, the more good you do, the more good you'll kind of get out of life. And so there's, I mean, the way like we kind of think about it is that, you know, like the more good you do in this life, you'll have a better life next year. The more good you do in the next life, you know, you can merge with God. But the karma from your previous lives, they will have an impact on your current life. So it's really, really like interconnected, this whole cycle of karma and the whole cycle of reincarnation. But I think what Radha Mohan said and what Serena said pretty much answers the question.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I know it's past 9 o'clock, but Ron's had his hand up for quite a long time now. So can we end it with Ron, please?
Yes.
I worked in Nepal for 9 years, and that's a Hindu kingdom. And they believed the king was a god, and he behaved as though he was a god. But I learned quite a lot from the Hindus there. Would their branch, I might say, of Hinduism differ from anywhere else? Because they used to do all sorts of things. For instance, we always had a puja before we started any new work. We used to have to kill a goat before we started digging the foundations for the grain silos. And the whole thing was different. I wondered if that's the same in India. Well, I've traveled extensively also in India. But I grew to respect them. They were very peaceful people, the Hindus. There are lots of questions I would like to ask, but they've all sort of gone by. But they believed the king was a god, and these are the Nepalese, and they believed the king was born from a cow. Now, obviously, you know, that isn't possible. But when I used to discuss such matters with the manager of the cement company or the brick companies, who were quite well educated, they believed it. But we used to we even had a shrine on my sites. I employed about 400 people, Nepalese, and I learned a lot from them. And we used to have to kill a goat before we ever started any work. There was a time also, whether it just applies to Nepal, a certain time of the year, we had to put the blood of the goat on the Land Rovers and all the equipment to make sure it will not break down. And my wife Thelma was my secretary, and we had an office in my residence. They even pujad her typewriter, that is, put blood on it, because so that it was a religious ceremony.
Is that the question you're asking?
That's the question. Is that just unique to Nepal?
Nepal.
The Hindu kingdom and the only Hindu kingdom.
Yes, okay. So, answer. Has anybody got an answer to that?
I mean, I can respond, but if someone else wants to go before me, it's a difficult area.
After we've had your responses, would you like to offer a prayer this evening?
That'd be fine. That'd be fine. You know.
And then I'll do a sort of summing up, a brief summing up.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. So Nepal, Nepal, the Kingdom of Nepal, of course, is different to that of India. It's another country, just like France and Britain is another country. Yeah. But they are generally a Hindu country. They have a few kingdoms of their own. Let's say a few, but of course it used to belong to what we call ancient Bharat, ancient India, or older forms of Hinduism. There are ancient Vedic scriptures actually which do refer to killing a goat, but this is what we in the Vaishnavas, which is my sect, would never kill an animal. But there are those, I suppose you could, it would consider to be a non-Brahminical kind of activity. But although there are, you know, it is mentioned, it's a very old form of, I guess you could say, Hinduism, which I wouldn't recognize, I wouldn't practice rather. As far as the king is concerned, being born from a cow, I mean, the only, I mean, obviously that's their business, but it might be metaphorical. It just like, you know, Jesus was born in a stable.
Yeah.
There was a donkey and there was, you know, maybe a calf there, I believe, and maybe he was born next to a cow, and therefore, but it was considered to be, it's metaphorical, I suggest, but it's their way of saying that he was divine, because cows are divine in the Hindu tradition. So, you know, representing Mother Earth. So perhaps I don't think he was, you know, born in the womb of a cow literally, but perhaps in spiritual kind of way, you know. I wasn't there, frankly, so I wouldn't know.
A bit before your day. And
Yeah,
what about Serena? And anything to add to that?
I was just going to say, yeah, I don't know much about whether that's just individual to Nepal, but in terms of like sacrifice, I think back in the day, even the temple, maybe Saidhanya will be able to expand, but you know, they might have done sort of animal sacrifices and things, and maybe they still do in India. But obviously, she said here, like they use grains and things like that. So I think there was moving away from those sorts of things. But that was all I had to contribute to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in terms of animal sacrifices, like maybe 100 years ago, that was when that happened. I know in Sri Lanka we had a sage who kind of reformed the rituals and kind of said, you know, animal sacrifices, it's not a thing, like it's not worth it. And I think he kind of made people realize that animals have a soul and they are a form of God, which is when that all stopped. In the UK, definitely, we don't have anything like that, obviously. And I think in the temples in India and Sri Lanka, the Saivite ones, that the whole practice just doesn't exist anymore. It's outdated and it's wrong.
I think there is something that's worth mentioning, which is interesting. It is, and I think it's one of the Vedas. I believe it's the Rig Veda, where it describes, you know, some ancient prayers in regard to killing a goat or something like that. But it's also, you see, the thing is that ancient Brahmanas, I'm talking about 5,000 years ago, knew hymns and were more, their memories were actually better than ours today. They didn't, believe it or not, all the social media, you see, is sucking our brains. Their memories were a lot more than they were today, and they knew mantras, and they knew the right mantras and prayers, which was able to send the goat's soul into a human body after it was killed. But the question is, nowadays this is not understood, and also the Brahmanas of today are not qualified to chant these mantras, you see. So thus, just like in the Bible, I think it was Lot was told not to, there was this away from this culture of sacrifice and more towards a different type of teachings. And you find that actually in the Old Testament as well, a movement away from the sacrificial lamb to worshipping the Lamb of God, you see. So, you know, you find that in Judaism as well, interestingly enough. And it was something that was practiced many thousands of years ago, which has become illegitimate today.
And three of you, is there something you could offer as a prayer of peace to us all, for those who are here in the troublesome world we live in?
Well, I can just chant some prayers. I don't know if I'm qualified or not. I'm certainly not going to be sacrificing any goats in the process, but I'll just say some prayers.
Lucky goats.
Okay, let me just say some prayers in Sanskrit, and then I'll finish there. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Prachadine Nivasesha Shunyavadi Pashachade Satadine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Thank you.
There you go. Okay.
Well, we've had a whistle-stop tour by three very devout people who worship and conduct their lives as followers of the Hindu faith. we thank you, and we thank you for the learnings we have had today. And may I send everybody home in peace.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very much indeed.
Well done. Thank you very, very much. God bless,
God bless
you all.
everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. God bless. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dhanyabad.
Namaste.
Namaste. Namaste.
Yes,
Thank you, everybody. It was an excellent evening.
yes, yes. That has been. Oh,
Very
lovely.
informative.
I'm very peaceful. I'm very at peace now. I don't know why.
Good.
It's lovely. It's been a wonderful evening. Thank you. God bless everyone.
Take care, everyone. I'm going to sign
Bye.
off.